Hey everyone, we'll be starting very shortly. We're going to give people a little bit longer to join and we'll be back in just a moment. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Austin Afshar, the clinic director and physical therapist at Spear Physical and Occupational Therapy's Park Slope location. I'd like to welcome back those of you who have attended one of our past webinars, as well as welcome those who are joining us for the first time. Thank you all for choosing to spend the next hour or so with us. For those of you who don't know who we are, Spear is a private outpatient practice that's been around for about 20 years with currently 20 locations located throughout the New York City metro area. We have continued to offer in-person care through the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are strategically going above and beyond the CDC guidelines to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone within our clinics. For more detailed information on the safety measures we're taking, please visit our website at spearcenter.com. Now, we've also launched Spear Live for those of you who are looking to stay home and receive care from the comfort of your own home. This gives you the opportunity to receive physical or occupational therapy treatment through our telehealth platform from any device. We're here to help you in whichever way makes you feel the most comfortable. If you're looking for individualized care, please reach out to us at your convenience and we'll get you set up for an appointment right away. Now, we're here with you today because since the COVID-19 pandemic began, many individuals have resorted to online workout routines, YouTube videos, or exercise apps as motivation to try new exercise programs or just to stay in shape. Now, as PTs, we're so happy at the number of you who are trying to stay in shape and keep moving. However, unfortunately, what we've really identified is that some people have been guilty of performing some upper and lower body exercises incorrectly, which leads to a high likelihood of adopting injuries along the way. Our team of talented and creative clinicians have joined forces and agreed that given today's ongoing challenging circumstances, it would be an awesome opportunity to provide you all with some tips and tricks on how to properly perform a few upper and lower body exercises, as well as share safe ways to progress these exercises or even regress them depending on your fitness level. Excuse me. We created today's talk specifically for you and are coming to you live from our Park Slope location and our Penn Plaza clinic. We don't anticipate any technical issues today, but please be patient as we navigate working through this new norm of technology for us. As part of our session, we're definitely going to be demonstrating some exercises and we really look forward to you following along and participating. I promise this will not be like your typical Zoom meeting. We're actually going to have a lot of fun today. But please note that if you are experiencing any pain while performing any of the exercises that we demonstrate for you today, to please stop, reach out to us directly so that we can provide you with support. Now, I want to take a second to go over a couple housekeeping things for those of you who are somewhat new to this platform. So throughout the webinar, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear what you have to say. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know your thoughts in the Q&A feature. Now, I'm going to take a second just to go over where that Q&A feature is. So if you can hover at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A option with 2 speech bubbles. That's where we want you to really funnel all of your questions so we can do our best to address as many of them as we can during the webinar. If you put your question in the chat section, we may not be able to get to it. So please, please, please focus on that Q&A section at the bottom with the 2 speech bubbles. Now, for those of you who are watching through YouTube Live, we are monitoring the comment section there as well. So please feel free to use that to type in your questions. All right, let's talk a little bit about the goals for the day and what we're going to be covering. So we'll understand the fundamentals of safe exercise techniques for the upper and lower body, how to apply those techniques to key upper and lower body exercises. We'll then understand common mistakes and how to self-correct. And lastly, we'll gain clarity on how to exercise safely. Ultimately, we want to get you moving, we want to keep you moving, and we more so want to make sure you're doing it safely and correctly. Now, before we get started, we're going to bring our team of panelists in to meet everyone. Let's bring them in now. All right, so let's first welcome Brett Warner, who's a physical therapist from our Park Slope location.
Hey everyone, thanks for logging in today.
Next, we have Jon Bernfeld, who's the assistant clinic director and physical therapist from our Penn Plaza location.
Hey everybody, really excited to get this going today.
And lastly, Don Squire, who's a physical therapist and the clinic director at our Penn Plaza location. He'll be in the background with answering your questions in the Q&A section.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. I look forward to seeing you guys for behind the scenes.
Welcome everyone. Let's get this show started. Don, Brett, and I are going to say goodbye for now. Jon, the show is yours.
All right, so thank you, Austin. So as Austin said, I am a physical therapist and the assistant clinical director at our Penn Plaza location. Now, the overall goal of today is to kind of discuss exercise technique, but before we even get there, we kind of just want to throw a poll out to all of our participants, asking them, if you've experienced any shoulder pain while exercising, where was it located? Now, your options are in your front of your shoulder, in the back of the shoulder, the side of the shoulder, or deep in your shoulder joint. And lastly, I don't have any pain. I have shoulders like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So between those 5, if everyone can kind of just submit where if they've experienced pain, or even if they've experienced multiple kinds of pain, just determine which one that you've experienced the most. Now, as you'll see probably with our results, a lot of people actually experience pain in different ways, or some people experience pains more often than others. The idea is that the shoulder is a pretty complex, is a complex joint, but as you'll see, a lot of these symptoms for the shoulder pain can be originating in the same point, or you're just kind of here to really just pump up your workout routine. Like you said, you have perfect shoulders, you just want to maybe pick up some good tips and techniques. That's also good, because we're going to kind of delve through all of it. So it looks like our polls come in. Wow, so as you can see, we have 24 in the front, 20 in the back, not so much on the side. Majority of people said deep in the shoulder joint, and it's good to know we have 13% who have huge shoulders. So welcome to the webinar. So that being said, so as we can see, a lot of it's kind of coming into deep in the shoulder. But before we get down to the technique, the one thing I always like to do is always educate my patients. When you're in clinic, it's always good to understand and visualize how we do things. So right here, I have in front of me is an actual shoulder joint. As you can see on the screen, it kind of shows the display of where the pain is and kind of the muscles surrounding the shoulder joint. But the shoulder joint, even though I said it's complex, it moves complexly, but it's really made from 3 different bones all working together. In the front, you have your collarbone. In the back, what we have is called what we call the wing blade. And over here, you have your arm itself. And now every time you move your shoulder, all of these pieces are all moving together. And if you can see, the body's built fairly efficiently. There isn't much room for error, and everything's kind of wrapped in pretty tight. Now the problem is, because everything needs to move together, everything needs to be in the right place to move together. If they are not in the right place, this is typically when pain starts to develop, especially when doing exercises. So if you can see, if I'm just haphazard lifting my arm, there's a high likelihood this bone is going to start rubbing into the other bone, and then it's going to start causing some pain potentially on the top. Deep in the shoulder joint, you could be overstressing the actual structures there. And even if you can just watch, a lot of times now we're all sitting at home working from our desk, we're all starting to slowly slump forward like this. If you could just see me trying to raise my arm up as high as I can, this is as high as I go. I can't really go any further. And imagine if that muscle or that bone is tilted so far in front of you, a lot of the muscles surrounding the shoulder potentially trying to lift up that extra work, and that could be causing pain. But no need to worry. We're gonna try to introduce to you a technique, what I like to call the 1-2 set technique. A little shout out to any Sierra fans out there. Kind of stole the name from her, but who knows? Now, the 1-2 set technique is really simple. Like I said, a lot of time the pain stems from the shoulder being in the wrong position, leading to things to overwork or putting too much integrity on the structures in the shoulder. Now, with the 1-2 set technique, we want to kind of engage it through all shoulder movements. It's really that simple. You can ask any patient who comes in the clinic, this is what I do with every single one of them. And the concept is to really get the shoulder in the right position. Like I said, if the shoulder's in the bad position, a lot of things are going to be working improperly. The idea of the 1-2 set is you just kind of roll the shoulder and set the shoulder. So once we kind of roll the shoulder in the right position and set the shoulder, the idea is the shoulder is in its most structurally stable position. In this position, my arm could go right above my head. There's going to be no instability. There's not going to be tasking any improper things with overworking right now. So if everyone at home could just kind of start trying that, most often just kind of roll the shoulders forward, up and back, usually feels pretty good on the chest, especially after sitting like this all day. So everyone just kind of roll your shoulders, try to do 2 of these. And then once the shoulders roll back, you just kind of give a little pinch to the blades, just like that. Now, once they're rolled back and set, now is the most stable thing. And the idea is you want to kind of keep this concept through all exercises you're doing at the gym or at home. The concept is you want as much stability throughout your shoulder joint as possible to prevent that pain from happening from essentially the wrong structures overworking. Now that we kind of have that concept of a technique down, what we're going to do is actually demonstrate some shoulder exercise with you while incorporating this newfound technique. Now, Brett is going to join me to kind of demonstrate the exercise we have set up for you. Brett did tell me he did shoulders early this morning, but unfortunately he picked the wrong day. So, Brett, welcome to demonstrating on the shoulders.
All right, let's do this.
The first exercise that we're going to do is a classic push-up. Now, any video I've seen has some form of push-up, so oftentimes this causes pain. So we're going to kind of start with the most basic step and progress to the harder steps. The idea we doing this is because if you start progressing to a higher level and it's causing pain, we're showing you how to regress it, how to kind of restart and get the shoulder working properly. So the first one we're going to do is a wall push-up. So the wall push-up, before you even start, like I said, the 1-2 set, you roll and set the shoulders, you pinch them back, and then you just, as Brett's showing you, pushing through your chest and keeping your elbows in and only having the shoulder being extremely stable. Now, if you're finding out this is easy, I'm kind of getting it, that's great. And then we're going to kind of progress to a more technical push-up of getting on the floor. Now, this is the one that most people experience. Getting on the floor is going to be more difficult because you have a lot of pressure going through the shoulder joint, and you got to be careful. So just like that, Brett, let's get your knees on the floor first. Oftentimes, this is a good way to make a normal push-up feel less aggressive. So right here, Brett's just going to fall right back down with the same concept of keeping that shoulder and back and those scapular pinches. He's driving through his pecs, and he has no difficulty. He's not overstressing the shoulder. Now, once Brett kind of feels comfortable doing this, now he can slowly extend one leg out and then the other and get into a nice full push-up. But before Brett even gets here, this is the key. I always roll the shoulders first before you can get those legs out, just so your shoulders are ready. Because you can't just jump into it and then correct it. You can kind of need to start off the bat like it's shifting a car in gears. So Brett, you could drop down, and now Brett has great form pushing through the pecs, and not engaging over aggressively. Now, if we're all kind of getting through this and we're feeling great, what we want to make is a little harder. Well, we do something called a diamond push-up. So Brett's going to open up his hands just like this. He's going to make a diamond with his hands, and he's going to keep his elbows in, drop down, and push right back up. And this whole time, Brett is cognizant of where his shoulders are. You don't see his shoulders sliding forward or turning in. That's a common mistake with a push-up. He's keeping them nice and back and in line. Good job, Brett. So that is a basic push-up, most commonly used exercises. Now, we want to make it a little more fun, a little more interactive. Some people don't do push-ups. Some people do a lot more yoga videos, which surprisingly, a lot of people come into the clinic with yoga-related pain and issues. So what we're going to work on is a plank. So we're going to kind of do a yoga plank with our arms fully extended. Some people bend their elbows. We're going to start with arms fully extended. So Brett's going to get on his knees and just kind of put his arms out just like this. Now, we're starting in a slow position because
Hey,
Brett.
John. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Brett, can you quickly show us a wall push-up again? We had some technical difficulty. It looks like we weren't able to see that. So real quick, can you review that for us one more time, John and Brett?
No problem. Wall push-up.
So this is our elementary push-up. This is kind of to get the rhythm down. What Brett's going to do, he's going to roll and set his shoulders, keep his elbows in, and he's going to fall into the wall and push right up using his pecs only. He's not going to overstress the shoulder. A push-up is primarily used with your chest, and the shoulders are kind of on the back end. And Brett's kind of demonstrating the first step. Now remember, if any time over the course of that push-up progression you feel achy, you can always revert back to the starting point and get in rhythm. I think that's pretty good, Brett.
Nice.
Now, moving on to the next thing, like we said, we want to work on plank for anyone who kind of participates in any yoga exercises. It's just like the push-up, we always want to find a way to make it smooth and easy. What we do is we kind of start the plank with our arms fully out, our shoulders rolled back and in, and just getting our foundation straight. Once we feel comfortable with this, just like the push-up that we just did, Brett's going to slowly progress it, extend one leg out, and then the other leg. Now, this whole time, you didn't notice Brett move his shoulders at all. He's ready for the military. He's ready to go. He's keeping a solid foundation. Now, once he's kind of feeling good on this, we can make it a little more complex. Anytime you can add movement to an exercise while keeping stability is always a pro. So Brett's going to start doing what we call a shoulder tap. He's going to maintain the position and touch the opposite shoulder from one side to the other. As you can see, he's not just trying to rotate to touch the goal. He's keeping his upper body straight and moving from side to side. Now, once Brett kind of has this down and he keeps rolling, we're going to move into something called a alternating plank push-up. So Brett's going to get back into that position. We're going to retake what we did before, and we're just going to slowly lower one arm at a time and then push the body up. Now, keep going lower and up, just like this. Now, sometimes people just want to rush through the exercise, get it done. They lose that form and just start climbing like this. We always want to keep it down, keep it lined. You're just moving through the chest mostly. Now, the last thing, like I said, movement's always a key. So once we have this down, the next thing we want to do is something called a bear crawl. A bear crawl, as you'll notice, Brett's going to be on his hands and his knees are going to be above the air. And he's just kind of move through the floor, just like this, one arm and one leg at a time, just like that. As you can see, he's not really dropping his shoulders, he's dropping his knees because everything is stable. He's engaging through all these muscles. And Brett, you can take a break. And the reason we're showing you this is because oftentimes when we put our body weight through our arms, we lose focus, we want to get it done. That's not proper. If anything hurts, you can always go back and regress to where we start. Now, the last thing we want to show you, finally want to get you off your hands and knees. We're going to do something without any weight, but also just as challenging. What we're going to do is something called a prone Y to start it out. So overhead, and what we're doing is going to raise our arm overhead like this. Brett, you can get on the floor. You could put your arm over your head just like that. You want to kind of cover your head like this, give it a little cushion. And with the opposite arm, you're raising up just like that. Now, the reason we're working on this, because oftentimes people, when their arm goes above their shoulder, when their arm goes above their head, that's when they experience most pain. However, before you lift your arm, you're going to use our 1-2 set, lock it in, and pull from actually lower down. We're actually activating the lower traps right here and pulling up, adding stability and not overstressing the joint, the structures in the shoulder. Now, once Brett's kind of demonstrating a good technique there, we're going to make it a little more difficult. We're going to be like Clark Kent. We're going to make this into a Superman. And you want to feel like you're flying your floor. So he's going to raise both arms up and both legs, and he's going to keep that engagement through the shoulder. He's not going to lose it. He's going to actively keep engaging low and lifting up his shoulders, just like that, never losing the structure. Now, once Brett kind of has that, we're going to retake in our plank from our second progression, and Brett's going to get onto his hands and knees. And what he's going to do is something called the bird dog. Now, the bird dog is when you raise your arm up like this and your leg behind you. The idea of doing that is because when you lift your arm up and down like that, you want to engage that arm and don't lose focus of pulling through that roll and set and locking it down and in. Now, once Brett kind of has this nice and controlled, we're going to start adding what we call a side plank. A side plank is going to require a lot of stability through the side of the shoulder. Same thing, Brett rolls and sets his shoulder down before putting weight through. And just like that, his body is stable. If you start feeling pain on the front of the shoulder, it most likely means you're twisting in. Keep it down and steady. Now, if this is too hard, you can always get down on your elbows, add a little bit of more stability through the body, less pressure through the shoulder joint. Perfect. And then the last thing to kind of give Brett a break, we're going to do something called threading the needle. So Brett's going to get on his hands and legs forward like that. He's going to extend his arms out, and he's going to thread the needle. He's going to roll one arm through, up like that, and just like a side plank, and rolling through. Now, as you can notice, his shoulder is not moving, and he's fully keeping that stable shoulder nice and steady with that 1-2 set technique. And now if this becomes too hard, same thing like before, you can lower down in your elbow and just kind of perform a little bit more of a stable exercise using that set shoulder, that nice balance, stability without any kind of pain. And that's it, Brett, you made it. Now, hopefully all you guys participated in performing that, but we're gonna send out a handout with all these exercises. The big focus, roll, set, the 1-2 set, and your shoulder should feel really a lot more stable. So thank you so much for everyone participating. Now I'm going to hand it off to Brett to kind of talk about the core and the lower body in terms of technique.
All right, John. You didn't tell me how many of those I was going to have to do. I'm all out of breath now. So let's do this. So like John said, my name is Brett Warner. I'm a physical therapist at our Park Slope location. We're going to go kind of similar to what John did. Couple fundamental techniques of lower body exercises, and we're going to apply those into a few exercises with the progressions and regressions. So before we get into it, I just want to start you guys off with a quick poll question. So our question is, how confident are you that you are properly engaging your core during exercise? So our options are, I got this, I think I'm doing it right, not confident at all, never really thought about it, and what's a core anyways? So, we know you're doing exercises at home. We know you've worked with trainers, you've heard, engage your core, tighten your tummy, squeeze your abs, but there's a lot of conflicting info on what this really means. So we want to go over today what the best way to really brace your core to protect your back is during these exercises. All right, so good. We got a bit of a mix, but overall, kind of split between mostly think we got it and not confident at all. And I'm glad to see this because we're going to go through this next. So let's come into our first slide. All right. All right, hopefully you guys can see this animation as well. So we're going to go over a maneuver called the draw-in maneuver. So what you're seeing here is a little anatomy picture of a muscle we call the transverse abdominis. Big word, let's just call it the TA muscle. As you can see here, it's wrapping all around from your back, around your hips, all the way even up into your ribs and your sternum. It loops around your trunk like a corset. As you can see that green loop, when it contracts, it wraps and it tightens and it constricts your trunk. So some of our other abdominal muscles, the fibers move up and down. So when you contract those muscles, your spine also moves up and down. But when you're performing exercise, you don't want your back to move. You want your back still. You want to create a rigid cylinder through the trunk. So by contracting this muscle specifically through the jaw and maneuver, you can keep your trunk constricted and tight. And we're going to go through together how to find this muscle and how to contract it in a second. But first, I want to tell you why this is so important during exercise. So I want to talk about our discs a little bit in our low back. The anatomy of our disc is similar to this jelly donut you can see on the right. It's kind of this fibrous ring with a gel on the inside. So if you imagine, if you squeeze the end of a jelly donut hard, that the opposite end is going to start tearing, eventually even rip, and the jelly will ooze out like this. Similar things can happen to your back, both with large sudden forces and even with small little forces wearing away over time. So if we come over to this graph, I have circled a picture of a person lifting up a box and their spine is bent forward. I'm really just showing you this to show when you lift weight with your spine in a flexed forward position, you're putting 450% more pressure on your discs than you are in just straight standing. So it's really important that we keep that spine rigid and straight when you're exercising and when you're lifting weights, so that you don't end up with these disc injuries, with sciatica, with low back pain, things like that. So let's stand up together. I just want to go over how to find that transverse abdominis muscle and how to contract it. So let's everybody stand up with me. We'll practice this together. First thing we're going to do is find it and make sure we're contracting. So you're going to find your hip bones right in the front. You take your fingers about 2 inches to the inside of that hip bone and go about 1 inch down, just light pressure right there. Keep feeling there with your fingers while you take your belly button and you draw in, almost like you're putting on a pair of pants that's one size too tight. So you're feeling there, drawing in at the belly button. You should feel a little bit of muscle rise up into your fingertips. That's how you know you're getting this. And if you watch my back, when I draw in, my back doesn't move. This stays here. Okay, so if you feel like your back is bending, like you're squeezing through your butt, bearing down, you're not quite getting it. Take a step back and go a little bit softer and pull in. So we're gonna incorporate this into all the exercises we do today. So hang on to that. Before we get to the exercises, there's one more set of fundamentals that I want to go over with you. So let's go back to our next slide. And guys, you can find videos of isolating this muscle online on YouTube as well. Okay, so the second big thing is knee alignment. There's two aspects to knee alignment. First one you may have heard, when you're doing a squat, you don't want your knees going past your toes. So if you look on the left, we've got this image A, where this guy's knees are coming out past his toes, versus B, where they're staying in line with his toes or slightly behind. So B is where you want to live when you're doing lower body exercises, whether it's a squat, a lunge, or other various types. What happens, you have your knee with the anatomy, you have its kneecap on front, big quadriceps muscle coming down the front of your thigh over your knee. You get a lot of torque through the knee, which results in compression going straight through the joints. When your knees are out over your toes, it raises the torque and raises the compression and leads to things like pain in the front of the knee that some of you may have experienced with exercise before. Second principle is going to be keeping your knees out over your toes to the side so they're not caving in. When you are moving through a lower body exercise, your kneecap should stay in line over your second toe. If you watch this lady squat here, her knees are caving in. What this does, and I put this skeleton picture just for a quick reference, it puts these rotational forces all through your leg, through the hip, through the knee, through the ankle. Guys, this leads to a lot of injuries. We see this all the time in the clinic, and they're not just knee injuries, they're hip injuries, they're foot injuries, they're even back injuries. So keeping those knees out is really important. All right, that being said, let's start applying this. So John and I are gonna walk you through a few things. I wanna start with a simple squat. Squatting, we all do it, but there's so much conflicting information out there and how common it is with strength training, even HIIT classes. I think it's really important to just nail down the subtleties and make sure we're doing it correctly and safely. So John and I are going to show you, we're going to give you two different views. John, I'm going to have you stand to the side there. Thank you. And guys, I apologize, my space is a little small, so you're going to get to talk to my waist for a few minutes here. So let's start with your base. Your feet should be about hip width apart, and your toes can be turned outwards just slightly. You're starting there. Before we do the movement, remember that abdominal drawing? We're pulling that belly button in like our pants are too tight. Hold that in, keep it held throughout the whole movement. You're bending at the hips, letting the knees follow as you come down. So go ahead, practice along nice, slow and steady. If you watch John's knees, you see how they don't go excessively forward. They're not going out beyond his toes. And if you look at mine, they're not caving in. They're out over that second toe. Now, if you're getting a little bit of knee pain with this, it's important to not squat through pain. So just go less far. You can do just half depth if you're getting some pain. If this is still a little bit bothersome for you, find a wall. You can put your back up to a wall, step your feet out, same base, hip width apart, belly button is still in. Just slide down the wall, partially come back up. Let that wall support your back and your knees through this exercise. If you're finding your knees are going too far out, you're probably just too close to the wall. Walk out those feet, go down, and you should be fine. Now, if you're finding you're totally fine with regular squats, you can get through, say, 20 repetitions, no pain, no fatigue, nothing like that. It's time to add resistance. If you have weights at home, you can use dumbbells at your side. You can use dumbbells up on your shoulders. You can hold a kettlebell by your chest. A lot of us don't have weights right now because we all know they're sold out everywhere. So try a backpack. You can take a backpack, put some heavy books in it, something of weight on your back. Just make sure you pull those straps up tight so the weight's not sagging behind you. Now, if you don't have anything to hold for weight, that's okay because we can also use time. So there's a principle called time under tension. It basically says the longer these muscles are working and under tension, the more strength benefits we get. So you start in your regular squat, and now we're gonna move slow. Belly button in as always and stays into the whole movement. You're going down 5-second count to get to the bottom. Now you just hold. Start with 5 seconds, work your way up. Progress over time, 10 seconds, 15, even to 30 seconds, slowly back up. As you move slowly, as you hold at the bottom, you're keeping tension in those muscles. They have to work to hold you up, so you're gonna get a greater strength benefit out of that. Last thing with the squats, a couple quick mistakes we see in the clinic that often leads to knee pain and other injuries. First thing is knees going past the toes. So a lot of times we see people squatting like this. So if I just bend my knees, I don't even think about my hips. I come down like this, right? If you bend your hips first, let your knees follow, you come back and your knees stay back. Easy way to teach yourself to do this, get a chair, preferably not one with wheels like us, but we'll work with what we got. Coming down, tap, coming back up. The second thing we talked about, knee alignment with those knees caving in. If you're having trouble keeping them out yourself, grab a loop or some sort of resistance band. You can put it on your legs right above your knees. So this band, if I just relax, pushes my knees right in. So I have to actively use my muscles to keep the band out. So you're basically using the band to tell you, hey, I have to push my knees out or I end up in this uncomfortable position. So you do it here and you're just doing your regular squats from there. Last one I want to show you, and this comes back to those jelly donut discs in our spine. We see a lot of people when they squat, they don't keep their back straight. They're not doing that drawing maneuver, keeping their core straight. And when they come down, they bend forward through the back. This is going to put those forces on your spine that can lead to discs. If you grab an object at home, I have a pipe, but A broomstick or a mop works well. Just hold it along your spine. It should be touching right down here, your sacrum. That's the bony area by your glutes. And right up here between the shoulder blades. It should stay there, touching those points as you squat. If you can't keep this touching those points, it probably means you're bending forward through the spine. When you keep it here, it's indicating that your back is staying nice and aligned. So this is what we're trying to avoid. This is what we want. Okay, so that's squat. So, like we said before, we'll go through questions at the end. I'm sure you guys might have some, but let's go through a lunge next. So lunging, another common exercise we see, really great for strength training, really great for HIIT classes, but it does lead to a lot of injuries, unfortunately. So let's go through that. So the lunge, you're starting same pace as the squat. You need your feet to be about hip width apart. Again, draw that belly button in, keep that in the whole movement. You're gonna step straight backwards, bending both knees so you go straight down. So you wanna bend both knees at the same time. You're going down so you're just shy of your knee touching the floor. As you look at Jon there, his front leg is about parallel to the floor, and he's not quite touching the floor with his back knee. That's what you're looking for. Keeping that belly button in the whole time. Excellent. Sometimes this can be a little bit difficult with balance. So to take it one step back, you can do a slider lunge. Instead of stepping back, same starting position, sliding that foot back into a lunge. This works best with socks on a hard floor or a cloth. Going back, trunks nice and upright, belly buttons in. If that's still bothering you, you're getting some knee pain, something of the sort, find a surface, kind of like Jon has there, a countertop, even a wall you can hold onto for some support. Same starting position, step back, but don't bend your back knee. Keep your back leg straight. It's just a half lunge, it's very gentle on the knees, and it's a great way to start if you're having pain with this exercise. Great, so one last thing. Now you're acing the lunge, you're ready for the next step. You can grab a stool, a low couch, something small. And we're gonna try what we call a Bulgarian split squat. So I'm gonna put my stool against the wall so it doesn't tip or slide, just a safety measure. So you're gonna start in front of the stool, same base, feet hip width apart, abdominal draw in. You're gonna step back onto the stool, belly button in, and you're dipping straight down. This takes your back leg out of it a little bit and makes it more of a single leg activity, so you get additional strength benefits for that front leg. Now, there's really just two big mistakes we see with the lunge. All goes back to that knee alignment. The first one is your knees coming forward over your toes. So if I step back and my knees are coming out like this, easy fix. My feet are probably just too close together. You're coming down, knees going out. Take a longer step and your knee will stay back. Second one is knees coming in. And that's why this hip width is so important. If you start with your feet together and you step back, notice the angle of my thigh, how it points inwards like this. You start with a wider base at your hip width. When you come back, that hip joint and knee joint are in line, so you're not stressing that kneecap on the front. All right, awesome job, guys. That's our basis with the lunge. I know that was a little bit fast. I know you guys probably have a lot of questions. We want to allow plenty of time with that. So let's get to the Q&A now.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great presentation. I really love seeing the side-by-side to really understand the proper form and techniques for those exercises. So we definitely got a lot of questions coming through. So let's dive right in. All right. So we have a question regarding push-ups. So should the elbows be at your side when doing a push-up, when doing a push-up, or extended out?
Typically, I always like to cue my patients to keep their elbows in as close to their sides as possible, because when doing a push-up, you want to use the strongest muscle. That's oftentimes your pecs. You don't want to overstress the outside parts of your body. And typically when people extend their arms out like this to do a push-up, they're oftentimes putting a lot of stress through the shoulder when the push-up is really primarily a chest exercise. So I often tell most of my patients to keep their elbows nice and snug to their side and then pushing up through their pecs.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Let's jump into, so there's a question to clarify how far apart your hands should be. It was a little hard to tell with the angle. So I'm thinking the best thing to do, the question came in around when we were doing push-ups and bird dogs. So if you guys could explain a little bit as to where your hands should be in relation to the rest of your body with both push-ups and bird dogs.
So typically your hands should just be at your shoulder's length. They shouldn't be any wider out. It should typically be just in line with your shoulder and kind of straight position like this. You don't want any twisting. You want to kind of keep it as straight as possible and then rotating your shoulders back and setting them in. And the whole time my hands stay in this position, there's no movement because my shoulder is set, and that's the most stable part we want to have. So you want to keep, like I said, just with the push-up, you want to keep as straight in line with the big parts of your body as possible.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's get into some lower body questions. So is it okay to lean forward when you're doing a lunge?
So ideally you want to go straight up and down. That's because of what we talk about with the knee alignment. So let me show you. And that's why I like the step back lunge. So a lot of times what we see leaning forward, it looks something like this, right? And although you would be okay to lean forward, as long as you get stopped right there, knees over the toes, it's okay when you're really thinking about it, but you get a little bit more tired, you know, you're doing more lunges and you start coming forward. Honestly, it's easiest to just step back and you'll go straight down. When you go straight down, you're avoiding some of the excess torque you get with this forward momentum.
Awesome. So I'm going to add in a little follow-up on myself. So just for clarification purposes for everyone out there, is it safe, Jon and Brett, to say that you want to keep the knee ideally on top of the ankle when you're doing a lunge?
So that's a great question, actually. So, and this is something I'm actually glad this came up because this comes up a lot. So we say we don't want the knees going over, like past the toes, right? But a lot of people take that as it has to be as far back as possible. You're basically taking your knee to the edge, but not going past. So you don't want your knee to be over the ankle. I wouldn't go as far to say it's unsafe, but if my knees stay over my ankle, I have to come so far back that I'm about to fall backwards. If I allow my knees to come out to the front of my toes, then I'm stable, my joints are in line, I'm not at risk of falling backwards, and I'm not at risk of injuring my knees from coming out. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of practice to get it right, and I would really encourage you guys to use mirrors or a webcam like this, even a phone camera, to really watch yourself until you've got that right position.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. So is the squat position how you would pick something up from the floor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in a perfect world, we could pick everything up with a squat position. I'll use my stool to show you. That's a great question. A few differences you might encounter is how wide your hips are. When you pick something up, you want your weight to be over the object. Remember when we looked at that person picking the box up and the force on the spine? They were holding it here like this, right? So the further away that it gets from your body, the more torque and rotation you put through your back. You want that object as close to here as possible. In order to get that, you want to be even like around. If you have a box, you get your feet around it, squat, lift. That would be ideal. Like I said, now with this object in particular, my feet's a little wider than hip width. That's going to be okay for this scenario because it's better to have that weight close to you. You want to always use those legs to lift. If you just lift through your back, you're again at risk of putting too much force through that spine.
Great, thanks, Brett. John, so can we come or can someone come to physical therapy to learn the proper way to lift without getting hurt?
100%. I'm a believer that there's never zero exercise or zero things you could do, no matter what injury you have. So the big thing we do in physical therapy is pretty much like this. We obviously re-educate you about what's going on. We take a look at your specific impairments. You know, is it deep in the shoulders, in front of the shoulder, to kind of get a bigger picture of what's causing you the pain. That's both once we kind of understand where it's coming from, we always want to kind of calm that pain down because we want to reset the body. Pain is your body telling you something's not right. As strong as you could be, if you're having pain, it's meaning something's not right. So we want to find what's causing that and try to alleviate that as much as possible. Then once we kind of have a good understanding of how to calm that down, with shoulders specifically, shoulders and posture go hand in hand. I could tell you do a million bicep curls, but if you're sitting hunched over like this doing it, we probably could be causing more damage than good. So we always want to work on getting a nice, strong and tall chest, keeping the shoulders set. Now, once you do that, the next thing we would kind of progress onto is kind of developing the rotator cuff. Now, in the beginning model I showed you, these are the red things right here. We want to develop them to become stronger to add stability to your shoulder. Once the stability is starting to kind of be incorporated and started turned up, the last thing we always work on is functional technique. What we mean by functional technique is once we've had the shoulder, we understand where it's coming from, it's calmed down, we're in the right position, and our muscles are stronger. I need you to make sure to understand how you use all of it to prevent it from happening again. Because that's the real goal of all physical therapy. The goal of physical therapy is a long-term plan for you to understand how to not only get better where you're at, but to actually further improve yourself so you never need to come back here again. We develop a maintenance program, exercises that actually benefit you in the long run that you could do at the comfort of your own home or in your own gym. What I like to tell people, the end goal is 3 to 4 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes, what we call a maintenance program. We're here to teach you and educate you about your body so you can then further improve your life and have a better feeling of how to do things right.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's jump into a question about the core. So we got a really good question. While an individual is bracing their core, do they hold their breath?
Yeah, that's a great question. You should not hold your breath. So there's something called a Valsalva, and it's what happens when you bear down your core and hold your breath. What it does is it builds up pressure like a balloon, like blowing up inside your stomach. But because you're bearing down, it has nowhere to go. That pressure will find the weakest point and it will go through that. That could be your abdominal wall and you get a hernia. It could be your GI system and you end up with incontinence. It could be a disc in your back and you end up with a disc. So what you want to do is exhale through the movement. So the exercise that we showed today, when you're squatting, as you rise or lunging as you rise, you're exhaling to release that pressure through the weakest point, which would be your throat because you've opened it up to let that out. If you feel like you can't breathe when you do that core contraction, you're probably bearing down aggressively. Your ab muscles, they flex your spine, right, like this. They also expel air. So if you're really bearing down and you feel like you can't breathe, you can't pull air in, you're probably going too aggressively. And that's why that jaw maneuver, you're pulling that belly button in, it's nice and gentle. Your back, you pull it in, I can hold this in and I can breathe. It's just a way you can check yourself.
Great. Thanks, Brett. I'm gonna do a little two-part question here. So, John, I'm gonna ask Brett a question, but while I ask Brett a question, do me a favor. There should be a backpack outside of your door. We got a really good question about demonstrating proper adjustment of a heavy backpack. If you can grab that. Brett, is there any way that you can modify a push-up, bird dog, or plank, basically any of the exercises where you're bearing weight through the hands? Is there any way that we can modify that for anyone with a wrist issue or hand issue?
Sure. So
Yeah.
we'll start, John, you want to start with the backpack?
Yeah, I got the backpack right here.
Okay, so if you have your straps loosened all the weight hangs down your back and it kind of sags down. You basically just pull the straps tight. Just pull nice and tight. If you have a little like sternum chest strap, I would say even buckle that so that your weight is there. And then you just want to be careful. Now that weight's on your back. So you have to just be extra careful that you're not your spine forward. So John, just show what that would look like if you bent your spine forward with the backpack. You want to avoid. So you're doing that drawing maneuver and just make sure this stays flat as you come down. But you want that, just pull it all the way up. Keep it nice and tight, high on your back. So let's do, so we said push-ups, bird dogs if you're having wrist pain. That was the question?
Yeah, so is there any modifications? Is there anything you can do with your hands and wrists doing those exercises if you have pain or discomfort when you're bearing through your hand?
Yeah, I can take this one. So that is a pretty often complaint that people have when bearing weight through their arms. There's a couple modifications we could do. Now, if you still like doing the full push-up, but it hurts to do this, I do make a fist like this. So Brett, if you want to show them, just doing what we call fist push-ups, and you just, anything we were talking about that, you kind of bear your weight through your arm. This way, the weight goes through the whole shoulder and through the arm itself, as opposed to putting a lot of pressure on the wrist. Now, on top of that, let's say even doing that would be aggravating. The same thing that we could work on that we showed you before is getting on your elbows and putting weight through the elbows themselves. So this is pretty commonly with a plank. You just want to kind of have your elbows down like this in this position. This way your wrist and hands are fully neutral, but that doesn't mean we lose the roll and set technique. It's still involved the same way. Now, if you wanted to make this a little more complicated, a little more complex by doing what they said, a bird dog, there's kind of two alternations. You could still do, so Brett, if you want to set up having your elbow down and one knee down, this way you're not putting your weight through your wrist and you're still working on his right arm. So he's able to still extend in a small room, just like that. He's still able to extend and without putting too much weight on his wrist himself. And those are all common ways. And even with a plank, sometimes what I found, if it might hurt to do a full plank with your hands out like this, I would do a half knee plank, half full plank. So Brett, you could have one knee extended and one knee on the floor and still gaining stability while having your shoulders down. And that's kind of a good alternative if you still want to get that full technique. And eventually, once you kind of develop the proper, if you want to address wrist pain, that's kind of a separate subject. But these are ways to kind of keep you going and get you through those specific exercises.
Great, thanks guys. We had another really good question. So if someone's trying to work out the core ab muscles, more so the transverse abdominis, do sit-ups strengthen that specific muscle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the end of the day, your abdominal muscles will contract as a unit, but it really depends on what you're isolating and making the primary muscle. So when you're doing a sit-up, you're really using your rectus abdominis muscle. That's those six-pack abs. And I'll explain why. As you come up, right, you're flexing your spine up. So you're moving your back. The transverse abdominis isn't set up to actually move your back. It just constricts. It's like a corset pulling tight. So when you want to work this muscle, generally your back isn't moving. So there can be static exercises, static with the trunk. Things like planking, where you're not moving, that's creating your transverse abdominis. Exercises where you're on your back and you're maybe moving your arms and legs, but your back doesn't move. But sit-ups, crunches is going to work a different muscle.
Great, thanks, Brett. Going back real quick to the hands question, somebody actually put a really good question in the chat, and they asked that for wrist stability, if they have weights, can they hold on to the weights and put their weight through their hands while doing a push-up?
Yeah, 100%. I would say That's a great way to add stability. There's actually something called the perfect push-up. It's kind of a little device that costs about $20 to $40. It's a good way to kind of set up. But even if you have dumbbells, that's a great way to do it. The only thing I would warn you is that they do move. That's something you want to kind of be aware of, that you don't want to further get into a position and then your arms fling out. But same concept applies. You roll and set your shoulder, and then you can put your weight through those dumbbells, and that's an excellent way to kind of to try to alleviate any wrist pain. Great point, whoever brought that up.
Awesome, great. Let's get to one more question. So how long should you do a squat, or how long should you hold the squat? And with that, should your butt be passing your knees, or should it be aligned with your knees?
Yeah. Great question. I'm glad you brought that up. So to address the first part, how long do you hold the squat? This is really going to be independent and based on your fitness level. So I would recommend, if you're ready for that step, you're fine, you're pain-free through squats, and you want to hold it, start with 5 seconds and go up. As this becomes easy for you and you're not having pain, then just go up a few seconds at a time. You just don't want to jump right into like a 30-second hold. You want to go up in increments. I would go up in 5-second increments, is usually what I recommend, starting with 5 seconds. As far as squatting depth, this is a very conflicted topic when you look at this online. There's basically two trains of thoughts. You have healthcare professionals on one end saying, don't squat down butt past your knees because of breakdown at the knees and the back. And your other train of thought, you have your fitness and sports professionals saying, but you have to squat that deep to get maximal force development and maximal benefits from the exercise. And honestly, both are correct. But here's what I recommend. When you squat low, when I come down beyond my knees down here, right now, 20 times my body weight is going through this joint right now. And I'm not even holding weights yet. So over time, you're doing that repetitively, you start adding weight. It's a lot of force through these joints. The other thing, if you watch my spine as I come down, I'm coming at my back nice and flat, and suddenly it starts curving. I don't know if you can see that. It rounds this way, right? A lot of times in the exercise world, you might hear that described as a butt wink. What's happening is my low back is starting to flex. And we went back to those discs. When you're squatting through that, you're starting to wear away at those discs. So the problem with this is it's very individualistic and based on anatomy. It's based on the bony shape of your hips. So I would not squat below. You don't want to squat when your spine is dipping like that at the end. There's maybe some elite athletes who are competitive Olympic weightlifters or powerlifters who could do that, but only with supervision, with medical clearance, only with professional coaching. I would keep it to thighs about parallel to the ground, so you're avoiding that flexion in your spine as you come down.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. So to sum it all up, let's just make sure the hips don't go past the knees for most of us out there.
Yeah.
All right, Jon, Brett, thank you so much for your time. This was extremely informative, and really appreciate you guys taking the time out to both educate and explain and address some of these questions. All right, we hope today's talk was valuable and that you learned how to properly perform a few common exercises, as well as safe ways to progress and regress them if necessary. If we didn't get to your question, we will do our best to reach out to you directly afterwards. So please don't think that, that you're not going to get an answer to your question. You will. We'll also be sending out a handout of the exercises for you to have as a reference. So right now we have both Brett and Jon's contact information up. So again, please feel free, take a picture of this, write this down, take their contact information so you can reach out to them with any questions any concerns. If you'd like to schedule an appointment with them, if you're in the Brooklyn Park Slope area or the Penn Plaza location, please reach out to one of these two guys. They're definitely ready to get you scheduled and help you out with any of your questions. Awesome, great. Now we have myself and Donna. So please also take a picture of this, take our contact information down as well. If anybody here has any questions or would like to get an appointment scheduled at either one of our locations, we would be more than happy to help schedule an appointment with you and or answer any questions that you may have. All right, so as an orthopedic outpatient physical therapy practice, we treat an array of conditions from head to toe, and we're open for in-person visits as well as telehealth sessions. Should you feel that you could benefit from some individualized guidance and treatment, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us, and we'll personally coordinate you being set up with one of our team members for an evaluation. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for spending time with us this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. We wish you all the best and be well. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for joining us.